We do all kinds of things here at Word in Your Ear.
Videocasts like this.
Podcasts like this.
Crowdcast events with famous authors.
Live quizzes.
And we can guarantee to make your next birthday one you'll never forget.
There's only one way to guarantee getting all of this, to getting it before anybody else, and that's to sign on to be a supporter on Patreon.
Full details at this address.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a view.
All right, welcome to another Word in Your Attic. We're delighted to be joined by Chris Difford. Chris, how are you doing?
Surprisingly well, I think, today. It's been a long, challenging year so far. But, I've managed to stay creative, which is extraordinary.
Good.
Chris, you're in a hut, aren't you? This is a hut you built, especially in your garden, a kind of writing hut. Is that right?
Yeah, it's a shed that was built by some really enthusiastic guys who make small sheds, and it's like a log cabin outside of this. Ostensibly, that's what it looks like, and because I'm under a lot of trees, it sort of fits in very, very well, and it's quite cozy. I've got like a pretend coal fire in the corner here, which you can't see.
Coal effect.
The coal effect, yeah.
Yes.
And I'm surrounded by all of my books and notepads and lyrics from many years ago, and I just feel very comfortable here.
So, are you a well organized person?
I think I'm a well organized person to a degree. Yes, I do like to have the cups arranged in a certain way in the cupboard. I'm that kind of guy. And in here, it's well organized. It's trying to get my imagination organized enough so that I can write new songs. That's the thing that I'm struggling with.
Right.
And this is where you've been for most of lockdowns. You're in rural Sussex, I think, aren't you? Near the Downs.
Yeah, just below.
Yeah.
Well, we're on the South Downs and in a beautiful village. And, there's some really nice people here. And it's kind of cozy and hopefully safe.
Are you the kind of person who goes on lots of walks?
Well, interestingly, I was listening to an interview with Jeffrey Archer yesterday, and he was talking about his regime for the day. And it is, he starts writing at 6, finishes at 8, he starts again at 10, then he goes to 12, then he has lunch, and then he goes on a 3-mile walk. And he said, for anybody over 70 years of age, a 3-mile walk a day is essential for your health.
Right.
And I thought, sod that.
Sod that, I'm not 70, so
yeah.
Why should it bother me? Yeah.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, but you're not one of those people who needs kind of movement to have ideas or anything like that.
No, I do like getting out and walking around the Downs because it does clear the mind. There's nothing like an empty sky to clear the mind, I always think. And when there's struggles going on, I can sit here and I can look at my past. It's all around me and think, well, I'm so grateful for where I've been and what I've done, and therefore I feel full of gratitude for what I've got. And if there are any problems, I just let them drift.
Right.
Are you finding it harder to write then? Because you obviously not, a large percentage of what you did was live performance, which is kind of on the side now. But are you finding it harder to write?
Yeah, I have found it hard to write. I had a spur about a month ago where I wrote like 10 or 12 lyrics in a couple of days, and that was really nice. It was binging. And I think lyric writing is binging. I know that Bob Dylan, for instance, he binge writes. He doesn't sort of write every day. He might be welding some gates together, and then something goes in his shed, and he binges on like 6 lyrics. And that's the same thing for me, really. I binge. I can't sit here day after day doing the Randy Newman school of songwriting.
Yeah, does Randy Newman still do that? Because he used to hire an industrial space, didn't he, somewhere on a business park somewhere, just to go to work every day, didn't he?
He did, and I think there's a lot to be said for that. I used to do that back in the day when I lived in South London. I had an office in Greenwich Market with my desk in, and I used to get up and walk to work and sit at my desk and just see what happened. But normally what would happen is I'd hear people filling up the pub downstairs and be tempted to leave my desk.
So we've been talking to various people during this period, where sitting surrounded by their stuff, albeit not as well organized as your stuff is, and looking at it all and thinking, how did I end up with all this stuff? And now's the perfect opportunity for you to show and tell some of the stuff you've gathered over the years. What have you got there, Chris? What have you found particularly?
Well, I have to explain that first of all, I've moved quite a lot in the last 10 years, I mean, throughout my life, basically, since I was in a band. You know, a suitcase has been filled and I've been on the road, and consequently, I just move all the time. And then recently, when we moved to the village here, I went through a massive, big yellow room full of stuff. And I just thought, what's you know, if I died tomorrow, my kids would have to sort all this out. It's going to drive them nuts. So I started to sort it all out. And my record collection, which was quite big, although it had people had rifled it over the years, and so I'd lost a lot of the good stuff. Ex-wives and people like Paul Weller come round to your house and suddenly nick one of your albums, and and so a friend of mine who's got a vinyl label called Plane Groovy, his name's Chris.
Oh, I know. We know.
Yeah.
I just gave him the record collection and said, listen, you can have this, and you know, you'll look after it, and if I ever need anything, I can come and get it. And that's the deal. So he's got the vinyl, my kids have got some of it too, and then the only thing I have in my loft, I suppose, is a lot of stage suits from early on. And I know Squeeze were never Duran Duran or Adam and the Ants, so it wasn't exactly a V&A collection of suits and clothes. But it nevertheless, my kids won't let me get rid of the leather jacket that I wore on top of the Pops doing Cool for Cats, so it's upstairs.
Brilliant. So have you got any of the old records, or actually we ought to ask Dave about the traditional question. The record playing device.
Yeah, when you were a child, what kind of music playing machinery did you have in your house?
Well, my parents had a stereogram, which was bigger than a builder's coffin. It was massive. And, you know, the great, like everybody lying underneath listening to the two speakers pumping away, and the valves inside was just beautiful. And listening to the radio was so golden, you know, whether it was Jim Reeves or the Searchers or the Rolling Stones, you know, just the sound of music in those days was so appetizing, and you felt warm. It was like, you know, looking back, it was like it went hand in hand with roast dinners, you know, it was that kind of memory. And then then when I became a teenager, I was lucky enough to get a Bush record player with a lid that came up, and that is what I had my first record collection on. And I sadly don't know what happened to it, but it was a great listening device. It just had one speaker in it, but that was enough for me to play my Nice albums, or King Crimson, or Jimi Hendrix, whatever I happened to be listening to at the time.
Yeah. So what have you got there to show us, Chris?
Well, I've got a collection of diaries that you might be interested in. For instance, this one.
Oh wow! That's
you on the front? No.
Yes, that's me.
Oh, it is. Yeah, fantastic.
So this is 1973, and today is the 29th of October. Is that okay to disclose the date?
Oh, yeah.
So work was still. Went up to town with Glenn to see Mike Cooper. The book looks fine. Had a long chat over a glass of rum. Came home, freaked out at Charing Cross. Don't tell me why. Bought Quadrophenia by the Who.
That's a good day. It's time well spent.
On this day in 1973. So you went to see Mike Cooper. Mike Cooper, the kind of the blues
No, Mike Cooper was a
Singer.
manager,
Oh, right.
and so the story is that Ron Reed, who took this picture, was a sort of mentor for Glenn and I at the time. He was a photographer, lived in Notting Hill. He knew this guy called Mike Cooper, who was on the sort of periphery of the Robert Stigwood organisation. He had a lovely Muse place in just around the corner from Buckingham Palace. He had a Rolls Royce. He had all the trimmings of what would be a manager of that time.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
Glenn and I went to see him, obviously, on that day. I had no idea. And one of the things he said to us was, you know, boys, what I think would suit you is leather trousers.
Major changing point in your life. Yeah.
Well, as if that was going to make us famous, for God's sake.
Yeah.
But Glenn was a staunch vegetarian and wasn't up for the idea. And I thought it was a little bit odd. But he helped Ron put a book together called Tomorrow's People. Have you ever heard of that book?
No, go on.
Oh, should I get a copy of it?
Yeah, go on.
Yeah,
Let's
go
have a
on.
look, yeah. Oh, this is very good.
Okay, so Tomorrow's People was a book of Ron Reed's photography.
All right, okay.
With a foreword by Jeremy Sanford.
Right, go on. Jeremy Sanford, remind me.
Well, he wrote plays for today.
He wrote Cappy Come Home, doesn't he?
Cappy
Wasn't he?
Come Home,
I think,
yeah.
yeah, okay.
So the photography in here is, for instance, a picture of me and Glenn.
Oh, right, of course.
Oh,
No, I
that's
have
wonderful.
seen these pictures before.
That's
Yeah.
fantastic.
Face
Yeah,
paint-
you were about, what, 15 years old?
Yeah, face painting competition. on
Yes.
having taken a tab of acid at the same time. So this book is just full of pictures of like festivals of the time. That's the Isle of Wight.
Right. Yes.
And oddly, there's a picture of Slade on the back. I don't know why, but
Publisher obviously thought make it more commercial.
yeah. So Mike Cooper put this together, and he was basically going to be our manager and our mentor. But after a while, it just seemed like he was in it for some other reasons, but they weren't to do with music. So we slipped away out the back door.
I gotta say, the leather trousers.
Yeah.
That's a bit of a clue, isn't it? I
It's
think?
a bit leggy Mountbatten.
It is. It must be the trousers. Do you remember that? The
He
ruffles.
liked the trousers.
Yeah. A cellar full of boys, etc. Oh dear.
But you've always kept a diary, have you, all the way through?
Yeah, yeah, pretty much so. So that was, and that was 1973, 72. I could read that one. Let's see what that. This is before I met Glenn. So I had a band before Squeeze. I went to rehearsals and blew up my amplifier. Oh dear, what am I going to do? How am I going to get it fixed? The music was all right. Came home, had tea, had a bath, went down to my friend Leslie's house, listened to some records, ended up at the pub. We covered each other in glitter and danced around on Blackheath.
That's very early 70s, isn't it?
Yeah, sort of thing you did on a Friday.
It was.
Yeah.
Listen to some records.
And covered yourselves with glitter.
Yeah, and so the week before, this is quite interesting. I'm putting together a gig at the Harrow Inn, which was in Plumstead, around that neck of the woods in South London. And the list of people that are playing are the Flamin Groovies, Help Yourself, Ducks Deluxe, my band, which was called Porky's Falling Spikes, and Brinsley Schwarz.
Wow.
And I remember those gigs so well because Nick Lowe was such a wonderful guy. I knew that our band were shit, basically, and we went on first, and I just put the gigs together to raise money for the Agoraphobic Society. So hardly anybody came.
Is that true. That's a good gag.
It's a great gag, but it's true.
It's true.
Yeah, Nick after the gig he came up and said, "Oh, that was really good, well done," and would you like a fag? He gave me a cigarette, bought me a pint of beer, and was a real gentleman.
Yeah.
It was just a lovely night.
So go through that bill again. So Flamin Groovies, which lineup of the Flamin Groovies are we talking about? This is when 1972.
Yes, so
This is Teenage Head type.
Yeah, yes.
Cyril Jordan and Cyril Jordan was there all the time, but it was that kind of, it was the punky Flamin Groovies rather than the Beatles revivalists. Really?
Yeah, they were very exciting to watch, and they were a bit miffed. They'd come all the way from London to the Harrow Inn at Abbey Wood, and there was hardly anybody there, of course, and they did their set, and it was a bit odd for them, I think. But the band that I remember most is Deluxe, and I don't know why. I think I just really enjoyed the groove that they had. It was a really lovely groove.
So that was. So was Martin Belmont? No, Martin Belmont was not in Deluxe, was he? No, he wasn't. It was Sean Tyler. Wasn't it? Sean Tyler, Nick Garvey.
Ah, right, okay, yeah.
Nick Garvey went on to be in the Motors.
Yeah, and I can't remember who the drummer was. So Martin Belmont was in the Deluxe. That's amazing.
Yeah, so that was 1972. And then one more read if you'd like.
Yeah, go on, these are good.
So this is 74. So this is a year after Glenn and I and Jules have met. And the 29th. Didn't go to work. Spent all day being very lazy round at Jules's house. Had a nice day though for a Friday. Came home, had a bath. Max and Glenn came over with Nikki, and we walked around town. Had a few drinks. Said our farewells and had a Chinese and went home. Felt sick. And so that was that. And so Squeeze were definitely on.
I love the way the baths are recorded. You did that the year before.
You're very clean.
Yeah.
So around that time, that's when we were just getting our feet under the amplifiers as a band and starting to get to know each other. And it was, I was listening to all sorts of things around then.
What sort of things?
Well, there was a transitional period, wasn't there, where you went from pub, into pub rock, really, from listening to your favourite Yes albums to going to Islington to see Eddie and the Hot Rods or Ian Dury and the Blockheads, and that was the learning curve, the huge learning curve, really, that actually songwriting was a serious business and was to be enjoyed at all costs, and not to try and be flamboyant where you basically weren't going to have a chance. I could never have been in a band like King Crimson, but I knew that I could be in a band like Eddie and the Hot Rods with a little bit of polishing. So that was a good learning time, a learning curve.
Yeah.
And Elvis, Elvis is still an amazing lyricist. I mean, was he a? What did you think when you first heard his the Elvis songs?
Well, we were friends with Steve Naive before he joined the Attractions, so we followed with interest his first outing with Elvis, and I'd never heard of him. And then I listened to the lyrics, and I was spellbound by them, and they were a great education. And equally so with Ian, his lyrics were really a fantastic education for me. And really, when you look at people like Dave, I know it sounds odd, but people like Dave and Stormzy, they're not that far removed from that kind of lyric writing.
Storytelling,
but in a beautiful rhyme,
Yeah. What else you got there?
I've got a scrapbook.
Oh,
we love a scrapbook.
We like a scrapbook.
Yeah, we've had a few of those.
Okay.
Very revealing.
I'm just going to pull things out at random.
Oh, wow.
Oh yeah,
And
radio stars. Andy Ellison, was that
the
right?
Oasis Leisure Centre.
Yeah.
Star Swindon. The flesh box.
Squeeze, bottom of the bill.
God. Difford
Difford C.
Oh, you paid a receipt for something. £17 a night.
14 quid or something, is it? Yeah.
What's it for?
That's a pay slip.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
What were you doing to earn that?
I was working on at Readymix Cement. And my job was, my brother worked there and I worked there, and I had a bit of a dodgy job. But what was interesting on a Friday afternoon when all the truck drivers came back, in the hut where all the drivers would meet, the curtains were pulled and out would come a projector and a screen, and a reel would go on.
I can tell what's coming here.
Yeah, literally. And then they would show nuns walking across a bridge and a guy in a cowboy outfit drowning in a pond, and the nuns would go and resuscitate him in all sorts of different ways. And that's the kind of pleasure that I got up to. That was my job, to reel everything up.
So were you the projectionist?
I was the projectionist. Readymix Concrete.
That's really funny.
The weirdness of life in the early 70s there. Ready-mix concrete. When the drivers came back Friday afternoon, this was a regular kind of wind down the week. Instead of having opening a bottle of wine or anything like that, we're gonna
I remember vividly going for the first time to the pub across the road with all of the drivers, and I was very young and nervous, I suppose, of their company, because these were big guys, sort of the earth kind of South Londoners. And we went to this pub and the curtains were pulled there, and so on the loudspeakers comes Gilbert O'Sullivan, and on the stage comes a woman with not very much on, and she starts to do a dance, and it becomes topless, and with Gilbert O'Sullivan in the background. And I was kind of like, yeah, actually, this is all right. I'm enjoying this.
It's the comment.
It's been such a 70s experience. Yeah. Oh my God. Gilbert O'Sullivan and a stripper. That's brilliant.
The combination of the music and the stripper is just, it's not David Rose's The Stripper, is it? It's Alone Again Naturally.
Or something. Get down. That's right.
Get down, that's the one.
Really was. You're a bad dog, baby. That's it. Oh, God almighty.
But the biggest scrapbook of all in my room is this one.
All right. Okay.
And
what's the story of that?
Inside here, let's see. This might interest you. It's a summons to court.
For what? What did you do?
When was that? Yeah, we can't read it really. You're gonna have to tell us what.
Okay.
What have you only gone and done?
On the 27th of October 1975, you were adjudged by the Magistrates' Court sitting at Winchester Street, Acton, to pay the amount shown in the margin hereof for exhibiting obscene papers.
Oh, my God, what
were
doing?
They?
So Jules and I were in the back of a van, and we were bored, and we were going up the road out of London, the West Way, as it were, and there was a traffic jam. So Jules and I were writing things on bits of A4 paper and putting them on the back window for people to see in the traffic behind. One of them was, "I can see your tits, now show us your CUNT," which Jules thought was very, very funny.
Oh,
but what we didn't realise was the Mayoress of Acton was in a Rolls Royce.
She didn't see the funny side.
She didn't know. So her police cordon that was following her pulled us over, and we missed the gig. The gig was Squeeze supporting Renaissance, so that was a bit of a weird one. And we ended up in court, and we got fined £10.
So you're telling me that the Mayoress of Acton used to drive around with police outriders in order to keep the hoi polloi like you away from bothering her?
Well, apparently so. Yeah, apparently so.
That's extra. But you've kept all that.
Yeah, I mean, this book's full of treasures like that. Some of them, like a very early photo session of Squeeze that not many people have seen.
Oh, I've seen that picture somewhere. Yes.
So where's
it taken? It's not a.
It's the foot tunnel. Foot tunnel in
Greenwich.
Yeah.
Yes, of course it is.
Yeah.
So you keep all this stuff. Do you? I find I keep loads of stuff and then don't look at it at all. Do you go through your stuff?
Well, I don't sit here sobbing looking at it.
No, but you know.
Oh my God, those days were so good. No, they're there for reference. I mean, I was very inspired by Hello Sausages, which is a book of Ian Dury's lyrics put together by his daughter. I thought it was a brilliantly put together book. And I'm kind of thinking of doing something similar with memorabilia and stories from each album. And, it's something that's sort of percolating in the back.
Good. That's a good idea.
Yes. Have you got any more stuff there?
What from the script? Well, I've got some.
Well, whatever you got.
Well, anything.
Whatever you care to show us. Or what's a CD of some kind?
No, it's a tape.
All right. Okay.
Oh, it's tin.
Okay.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
What's it of?
It's me singing, by the look of it, 4 songs. And the story of this is that my council estate where I lived, there was a guy a few doors down who was a bit older than me, and he had a really good record collection and liked the MC5 and the Velvet Underground, and he sort of bathed me in that, and I loved it. I thought it was amazing sound. But he also had a tape recorder and a microphone, which I didn't have, but I'd written some songs on my own on a guitar. This is before meeting Glenn. And he said, why don't you record them? And I was sort of quite shy, but I went round, I recorded 10, 12 songs, thought nothing about it. And then 5 or 6 years ago, he turned up at one of my gigs with a bag full of those tapes. And I'd never heard them since that day, since 1972. So it was very beautiful of him to give me the tapes, but I couldn't find a tape recorder to play them on because it was, that technology's well gone. So I had to hire a room at Abbey Road to go and listen to them. And I have to say it was very emotional to hear myself with such passion to be as a young guy, I really wanted to be a songwriter. You could hear it in his voice, even though he was getting things wildly wrong. The ambition was there, and so.
Do you think you'll ever put them out? Will you ever release them?
I did. A friend of mine at Demon Records convinced me that it would be a good idea to put them out. So they're out there. They're called the Coombe Avenue demos.
Oh right, yes. But it must have been extraordinary. So you just recorded it in the front room in wherever it was, 1972. And then you heard it back over huge speakers at Abbey Road all those years later.
Yeah, and it was very emotional, I have to say. Just listening to the guy at the beginning of his career with a lot of songs that were very lyrically driven, but very influenced by David Bowie and Lou Reed. That was what I was into at the time. And so lyrically, they were kind of a bit far out, a bit dreamy. And also, I'd already been sort of existing on a record collection that had King Crimson in it. So Pete Sinfield's lyrics were very much part of my makeup.
Right. What else you got there?
Well, it's just more of that sort of stuff, really. More pictures and more sort of.
We love it. Keep it coming.
More diaries and stuff,
Pete Sinfield lyrics extraordinary at that time. The lyrics of 21st Century Schizoid Man, fantastic.
From that to Dollar.
I'd never heard anything like that in my life.
From that to Dollar was the most extraordinary thing. I
It
know,
was.
and he's not very well, and I feel for him. He's had lots of different operations and stuff, but yeah, I mean, I was such a big fan of his when I was at school. I took a Green Line bus to Somerset. I knew he lived in a little village down there. I took my King Crimson albums and stood outside his house, waiting for him to come out and sign them. Unfortunately, when he did come out, he walked straight past me and got in his car. But those were the days, weren't they? He had in my mind, he had a cape on and everything, because everybody wore capes in those days.
So, tell us that again. You got on a Green Line bus, the long forgotten Green Line buses, which were the way you got around the home counties, really, weren't they?
They were, and yeah, we could get one from Catford Bus Garage, which was a big bus garage near where I lived, and it would go up past Heathrow and then down the A3, I guess, and 303 down in towards Somerset. It was a long old trip, and
this just randomly, just in case Pete Sinfield happened to be home, basically.
Yeah, I had no idea whether he'd be there or not, but I knew he lived there because I did a bit of investigating. Yeah,
That's amazing.
yeah.
How old would you have been?
Well,
15?
yeah, I'd say I was 15. I used to do a lot of Green Line busing in those days because I used to enjoy plane-spodding. So I used to go on a Green Line bus to all different airports around the place. And I remember going to places like Portland Down, which was like a very high risk.
Hush hush.
Yeah, very hush hush, and I'd be sort of standing on the perimeter fence with a Instagram, one of those little cameras, on those little
Instamatic.
Instamatic, yeah.
Yes.
Waiting to take photographs.
There's the vision of you outside Pete Sinfield's house down in Somerset, holding your copy of In the Court of the Crimson King.
And the lizard.
And lizard or whatever. Just hoping he's going to come out. And
That's
he swept
just
straight past you.
Why didn't you stop him, having gone all that way? You could have said, I mean, if he'd thought you'd come all that way, age 15, with his albums to get them signed, and let him just walk past.
Well,
you'd have been mortified.
I've learned over the years that rock stars can have moods, bad moods. And, I remember hanging out once with, what was Jimi Hendrix's drummer?
Mitch Mitchell.
Mitch Mitchell. Yeah, I was hanging out with him for a bit because he lived in the village near where I lived. And he could turn on a sixpence and be extremely grumpy, but he lived in a really nice big tall house in the middle of Rye, and we'd been sort of chatting and stuff, and I said, "Oh, I'll walk you back to your house," hoping that he'd invite me in and show me loads of Jimi Hendrix memorabilia. It was one of those sort of things, and I got to his front door, and he was trying to get his. He couldn't get in the front door for some reason, and he shouted, and the top window of the house opened, and a suitcase flew out. His missus had locked him out and thrown his suitcase out and told him to F off.
That's classic.
So
was he slightly embarrassed, or did it happen all the time?
No, he was just very grumpy, and I said, "Is there anything I can do? Do you want to come stay at mine?" And he went, "Oh, well, bloody hell, it's happened again." And walked off into the darkness like some Dickensian character,
Oh, that's brilliant.
Oh, that's amazing. I only recently discovered that Mitch Mitchell played Jennings in the BBC adaptation of Jennings and Derbyshire as a child actor.
Wow.
Did you know that?
No.
Because he was a child actor. He was, a Corona stage show, stage school or whatever it was called.
Right.
And so at the age of about 10, he was starring in a BBC children's program, I suppose.
Wow.
Long before Jimi Hendrix.
Yeah.
I only recently discovered that. Oh, that's brilliant. See, on the very day you were hoping to get a look round the Jimi Hendrix collection.
It's the day his wife has chosen to kick him out.
And that is the most undignified way for a wife to kick anybody out, isn't it, really? In front of a mate, throw the suitcase.
I know, and what a thud it made.
Unambiguous.
and what made it all the better was he lived on the corner of a graveyard, where the church is in the middle of Rye, and so it made it even more Dickensian because it was like, oh my, he's going to sort of walk off into the fog and never see him again, and that's kind of exactly what happened. I never saw him again after that.
Isn't Rye kind of, isn't it Rockstar Central for that?
That's where McCartney lives, isn't it?
McCartney's not far from there, is he?
Well, I used to live next door to him, and so our farm at the time was right next door to his, and there were lots of things that we kind of learned over the years of being next door, and they were all fascinating. Like one night there was we had a very long drive down to our house and to the farm, and one night there was all sorts of commotion going on, and I went outside and there was a man in a Land Rover, and I said, "Can I help you?" And he said, "Yes, I'm looking for our hogs." I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Paul's hogs have got through the fence and they've gone missing, but we've got them all chipped, so I can see them on a screen and they're in your wood." So I said, "Well, go. You're 3 o'clock in the morning. You can go and get your hogs. I don't really mind, And it's so he had his hogs chipped, and I thought that was a brilliant thing.
It's very high tech.
I'm slightly surprised he's got any hogs in the first place.
Yeah.
Actually, it seems inconsistent. I can remember Neil Tennant at a tangent telling us a story, Dave, about being round at Paul's place and how he has that amazing technique of occasionally just reminding you that he's Paul McCartney. And he said he walked into the kitchen with the guitar and started singing "Here, There, and Everywhere." And Neil said he just completely melted. Can you imagine?
Well, we used to. I remember getting invited round there for lunch. Linda contacted us and said, "You must come and meet Paul," and I was terrified. I thought, my God, this is going to be one of those days, and I won't know what to say, And so we went around his house, and he was just telling us stories about when he met Little Richard, and the stories were just coming and coming and coming. And then Linda very nicely said to my partner at the time, "Why don't we leave the boys to talk? And maybe they would write a song." At which point I literally shit myself. Be put on the spot writing a song with him, And to my surprise, Paul said, he made a massive excuse that he couldn't do that. And so it didn't happen. But he came back in the room with the demo of the John Lennon tape, of him singing that became that Beatles song. I can't remember.
Free as a Bird or whatever.
Free as a Bird, yeah.
Right.
And we were the first sort of people to have a listen to it, and I wept. It was just so emotional having Paul McCartney in his kitchen singing along with John Lennon on a tape that no one else had heard. It was extraordinary.
That's an amazing story.
Yeah.
God, I would have been overpowered by that.
I was overpowered, and then I had a studio down the road, and Ron Sexsmith came over, and of course he was a massive Paul McCartney fan, and I said to Linda, "Oh, Ron Sexsmith's staying, he would really love to meet Paul, is it possible?" So anyway, we get the phone call back, "Do come up for lunch, we'd love to meet Ron." So we go up there, and we're sitting having eggs on toast or whatever it was, and to my surprise, Ron turned round to Paul and said, "Have you got a guitar?" And he said, "Yeah, here's one here." He went in the other room and got the guitar, at which point Ron started playing Wings songs to Paul McCartney in such a brilliant, so brilliantly that I was floored. I thought, who's got the guts to stand up in front of Paul McCartney and sing rare Wings songs? What a day.
I love the opening question. Have you got a guitar?
Yes.
Then Paul's going, "No, let them all go."
I had to flog them all.
It's a flog them all. You know how things are.
Yeah.
Oh, that's brilliant.
No, those are fantastic stories. That's brilliant. So what else you got, Chris? Any more?
Not really, just loads of this is like these are very early lyrics that I keep, that were typed out.
You typed them out.
Yeah.
But yeah, when I look back at these, I think, well, you know, in those days, which is a bit like now in a way, there's nothing to do but like lie on the floor, listen to Stevie Wonder records, you know, enjoy music on a record player, and then go and sit downstairs with a pen and paper and write loads of lyrics. And here's an interesting one. This one is, if you can see that.
It's handwritten, is all I can see. Go on. Tell us about that.
Has it got a title?
It's called Last Time Forever. So this was written in originally, but I would say very early days of meeting Glenn, 1973. Did you ever hear the words that said, I love you, and that it would end last night? And I know I can't pretend I didn't stop to think, and I upset her. I say goodnight tonight, the last time forever. Now that lyric sat in this file up until the time when we went to Belgium to make an album called Cozy Fan Tutti, with Laurie Latham as a producer, and that became the first single from the album. It wasn't a hugely successful record, I don't think. It was very much a record that sounded of its time with fretless bass and all the rest of it. But Last Time Forever, it's interesting to see that, because the original lyric must have been written in 73, yet we didn't get to record it till 1984.
Yeah. So what we traditionally do on these Word in Your Attics, or in your case a shed, is we ask people to tell us what was the greatest record ever made, which is clearly an impossible and stupid question, but it's one worth posing. And do you have an answer?
You can have a top 5 if you want, but it has to end with 1.
Right. Okay. Well, before I do that, I just want to show you this as well.
All right. Okay. What's this? Go on.
It's the Beatles Christmas floppy disk.
Oh, wonderful! The Christmas. They were wonderful. Those. They were fantastic.
Which one is
Gary
that?
Crimble and the Gear New Year, etc. Which year was it?
Well, it's the 6th Christmas record, and it says recorded in November 1968 at the lush London homes of Beatles John and Paul and Ringo, in a diesel-powered removal van somewhere in Surrey. The voice of Beatle George is heard because yours faithful, the GPO, did something right and joined 6,000 miles of television cable together so that we could have him on this record.
But they still really threw themselves into those Christmas records right up till the end with immense energy and enthusiasm and invention. Don't you think? I think they're wonderful.
Yeah, you wouldn't do that, would you? I mean,
no, they really made an effort.
Yeah, and I think that's what you need to do. You know, I think it was there were people like the Beatles and the Monkees had fan clubs, and that's the way it was. The Instagram of its day, and people
yeah,
in contact with one another. And we had a really fantastic fan club that was run by George's mum, and she ran it for many years, and that's how we kept in touch with all of our fans. We gave them, you know, special things at Christmas, and we tried to emulate the Beatles. You know, we'd have parties for them and send them cards, and it was so important in those days to reach out to everybody, as it is now, but of course it's not quite the same to be digitalizing your stories and your photographs.
Yeah.
So come on, the greatest record ever made.
Well, the one that I always gravitate to, and it's a live record, is the Allman Brothers live.
Oh, yes.
And the reason that I pull upon that is for 2 reasons. When it came out, I got on a number 53 bus in Blackheath, went to Oxford Street to HMV. I'd read about the record, and I went and bought the record, got on the bus, came home, put it on and listened to all 4 sides of it. And the sound of it was like, wow, so this is what a band sounds like. You know, this is like a proper band. 2 drummers, amazing guitar players, great atmosphere on stage. And I thought, that's exactly what I want to be. I want to be in a band like this, you know, a band that sounds this good.
They're a real gang, weren't they?
They're a real gang,
fantastic.
Yeah. And if I'm feeling, you know, if I have to get in the car and go somewhere to London or to a meeting, if I need to get my soul into a place of of goodness, I will put it on really loud and just absorb myself in it, and it always sounds incredible. And it was just only recorded on 2-inch tape in the back of the
Statesboro
van.
Blues has one of the great opening lines of all time, I think. Wake up, mama, turn your lamp down low.
Yeah.
You think, what's happening? My God. I've entered this at a point of extreme drama. That's a great record.
You know the story? They turned up the Fillmore to record that album with a horn section that they'd never used before and was completely unrehearsed. And they did one show with the horn section, and Tom Dowd, who engineered it, produced it, just said to them, "You've got to fire the horn section. It's not working." And so they were kind of fired between the first night and the second night, and they recorded the second night and the third night, I think. And that's where they got the
What
recording.
a brilliant decision that was.
Absolutely.
God, wouldn't have that ruined that record. The masterpiece.
Key decisions are always to leave something out. They're never to include something, are they?
Yeah, that's true.
The key decision is when. Stop. You've done enough, Actually,
and of course that horn section, if it was from New York, let's say, it would have been like David Sanborn and all sorts of great players at the time.
no, I don't think they were. I think they were. I don't know. I think they brought them up from Florida or whatever.
Oh, okay.
Actually, I've got a copy of that here.
I've got a copy of it too. Shall I go and get mine? Hang on.
Always got to have visuals. Of course, the other thing that was hugely appealing about that was just the picture of them on the front, wasn't it? It was the idea of them just kind of.
Yeah, and that kind of, it's beautiful that you both got that. I mean, it really sums up what a young man wanted to be. I wanted to be.
There we are.
What's that version? Is it in a book or something?
It's a book. It's a box set. It's a box set, actually.
They put out a thing a couple of years ago with outtakes and so forth.
Really nice. Well, yeah, it's got all the alternative takes and stuff. It's fantastic.
Oh, wow.
Get a picture of that. Have you? That's very funny.
So that for me was, that was the starting point. And here I am, 66 years old, and I still want to be in that band. I still want to be in a band on stage.
No shame there.
And be in a gang and have fun. And that's. At this point in time, that's not going to happen for a couple of years, I don't think, and that's quite sad.
Well, look, Chris, very nice to talk to you.
Lovely to talk to you. That was
very
so
nice
entertaining.
To see your shed.
Yes.
To learn about your mother's quadrophonic system.
And lunch at McCartney's and standing outside Pete Sinfield's house. I'm going to carry that around with me all day. This lone, rather sad figure. With his 2 King Crimson albums. Oh, it's wonderful.
And the Friday afternoon rituals of the Readymix concrete drivers.
Yes, that's nice.
I think that's all good stuff.
It is.
Thank you very much.
Thanks so much. All right.
Word in Your Attic, a Zoom with a View.